Our gracious Heavenly Father, let us thank you for this beautiful spring day that just makes the grass grow and the trees bud and the proof of new life coming forth. And if you'd put a saving hand on each and every one of our troops overseas and make their lives just a little easier, and look out for all of our people and help us to make good decisions that will be pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Chris Soap.
Here.
Bill England.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Julia Coates. Bradley Cobb.
Bonnie.
Joe Crittenden. Jody Fishinghawk. Here. Meredith Fraley. Janelle Fulbright. Don Garvin. Hannah Glory Jordan. Curtis Snell.
Here.
David Thornton. Eric Allen Watts.
Thank you, Shelley. We all had a chance to look at the minutes for the March 11th meeting. If we do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank everybody for coming out this morning. It's a little bit more spacious than what we're used to, but I think we'll get by. I don't see any visitors in the audience. I think everybody knows one another here, so we'll go on with our reports. And Norma, I believe you're first up on the agenda.
I don't know where to stand, so I'm stand right here.
Just come to the mic.
Why don't you go ahead and go to the mic there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My report has been sent to you, and we'll ask if there are any questions.
Norma, give us just a few minutes to let some of the council members scan these in case. I didn't see any questions. I thought it was a good report. It was well put together and a lot of information put into the report there. I'm going to go ahead and let you give some announcements if you'd like to do any highlights on your report.
I will just say I'm very proud of my child care the annual report. They had to do this for one of their funding agencies, but I thought it was very well done and had some good information in it. If you all did a one-pager about child care to get some highlights. I know that Councilman Soap had asked for some, I believe it was you, Councilman Soap, had asked for some information at our last meeting regarding why some people weren't funded for Live Youth, and you should have received that report, did you? Okay. And I hope that was put in everyone else's mailbox. The only other announcement I have is that this Thursday, the 17th, the Human Services and along with Housing and Rehab will be sponsoring our employee luncheon. And of course, food will be good, but we now have had to have, this is about our 4th year to have started a tradition of having our Indian Child Welfare auction during that employee luncheon. It's become kind of a favorite. And we pick up some really nice items there. And the main thing is you're going to be supporting our ICW kids. This money goes to fund things that none of the budgets will cover. So we'd invite you to come and have a nice meal and enjoy the auction. And usually our AG does a real fine job of being seen. So that ends my report.
Have any questions? Any questions for Norma? Okay, Norma, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Community Services, Mr. Charlie Soap.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
We have a question about the Community Service Department.
Have any questions? Charlie, I've had a couple of questions. On the budget highlights, you had $251,918 to be distributed to community projects. Are those monies already distributed, or are you going to be distributing those out? And if you are, what projects are they going to go to?
Those are existing projects that's going to be communities, and also sometimes when they use small water lines and those kinds of things that money's already distributed out to those areas.
So they haven't been distributed yet?
Yes, they have.
They have been?
Yeah.
Okay. At our next meeting, would you give us a...
I'll get a breakdown with it for that.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had is on, we'll provide housing surveys for 2008 ICDBG grant projects. Do we know where those IDBCG dollars are going to go to yet?
Where they want to go to?
Yes. You said surveys. Do you have any preliminary? I guess you haven't got them back yet, have you?
No, that's for the Leach project.
The Leach water line?
Right.
Okay.
So we're hoping we can fund it for a 60-mile water line. That's the first phase of those surveys, and that's what they're talking about.
Okay, yeah, I remember you telling me that now. Okay. The other question I had is, I understand back in September or October this year, we had some new dollars that were coming in for a new housing project, and I understand that the policy presented administration to be approved. I'm wondering where those policies are, and
Actually, Harley, we've had a couple of meetings set with Chad and over those. That's when we've going to different departments like we've had a committee group of people that set those policies, and then they have to go through compliance law just to make sure that those policies cover all the things in the contract. So those are done, but the issue of the situation where the fund had to file a meeting with Chad. We haven't meeting scheduled. Chad's off, he's busy, and so the other next time we have the 21st, I think is the next time we have a scheduled meeting. We had one last week, but he was out of town, so we had to reschedule that. So that's just they're there.
And the reason I asked, since that was announced, I've had several people ask me about those homes, and if we got money into the program, I'd like to see that money being spent. If we're waiting on policies, I know it's been in there since October, so we're looking at 5 or 6 months to wait on the policies there. The other question I had, Charlie, is I understand that you're looking at a water line to serve the West Silent Springs area and where the casino's being built in West Silent Springs.
Actually, there's two areas that we're looking at. Two things we're looking at is instead of just serving the Salon casinos, we're also looking at some property up in that area.
Yes, that's what I'm
saying. We can serve some 50 families. Also looking at the area of Mosley where we can help increase the wealth in that area. So we are looking at those areas. And I think we're just sort of in a preliminary stage meeting with West Salon Group and also with Sean Clayton. And we also had a meeting scheduled last couple of weeks ago, but we have to reschedule because people haven't scheduled on that. So we are working on it.
And the reason I asked that, Charlie, I guess someone brought to my attention the other day that they were trying to fill that storage tank there at the West Silent Spring Casino, and they only had like 7 pounds of pressure of water going in there. So, I can anticipate a problem being over there if we open the hotel up there next fall. So, anyway, I'm glad that you're working on it. That's all the questions I had for Charlie. Does anybody else on the committee have any questions? Ms. Fishing Hawk and Mr. Baker.
Can you tell us something about I keep getting questions about the Watts Youth Shelter.
The what?
The Watts Youth Center.
Watts Youth Center. That's the money that was appropriated by Community Works, and they are in the process of getting put together. It's supposed to be self-help. So this time, I know the money was allocated, but as far as actual work being started, I'm sure that's what they're getting, putting that together. This time, probably getting the dirt work and all that.
Thank you.
Mr. Baker.
Yes, Charlie, I'd just like to tell you how much we appreciate you and your staff coming out to California and cooking for us at Bakersfield and L.A. And y'all did a great job as always, and we appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Great group work.
Charlie, how's the survey come along on the Leach water project?
Very similar well. As a matter of fact, we completed the first phase of it. So thing to do with that project funding. We have marked that in our CDC. So we will finish the survey. It's done well.
Thank you.
Mr. Prater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank Charlie and the big group of guys that went out and cleared brush and stuff and uncovered a pickup out there at Mr. Johnson's house. He was tremendously happy that you all were out there that early, Charlie, and I know some of our people were out on the east side of Stillwell too. And those chainsaws didn't hardly have time to cool off Mr. Baker till he was on a plane going to cook out west, so he was busy. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Charlie Stowe? Charlie, have any announcements or anything you'd like for us? Any highlights? Okay, thank you. Good report. David Sutherland, thank you for Housing Services.
Should have a report. Just wanted to mention the left off this was the County Authority audit was completed the 1st of March, somewhere in that time frame. Good clean audit. Pretty good, strong financial position. I just want to mention that. Any questions I can answer?
Mr. Baker.
Dave, you gave us kind of a report last night, but how many Housing Authority employees are just got no offer, got nothing?
Everyone got an offer.
Everybody got an offer, a comparable offer.
Not comparable. Not everyone got a comparable. 30 have accepted the non-comparable. The one declined the non-comparable. One time there was probably 35 or 37 that had been offered non-comparables and have been able to shift some of those and make other offers. That's where they were comparable. Okay. So instead of 37, we had down to 30. But we had one that each of them wanted to. He got a pretty decent offer. Wasn't what he was making, and he felt like he needed more, I guess, than what he did.
And how about the COBRA for the employees that chose to separate?
The Housing Authority's policy, health insurance policy, ends on April 30th. There will be no policy to COBRA 2. So there will not be a COBRA option.
So are we making other arrangements to...
We have made no other arrangements. There's an agenda item on the board agenda for tonight to talk about it. I don't think the board is going to be, they haven't been inclined to look up that option. It's just something that trying to figure out how to say this and not be. I mean, once the plan ends, the Housing Authority will have no health insurance plan. And that's what it would have to have in order for those folks to COBRA once they leave. Since there won't be a plan, there won't be a COBRA offer.
And doesn't that kind of go against state and federal law?
No, we had it researched. If you don't have a plan to COBRA 2, there's no option for COBRA. Now, if we did have a plan continuing, then yes, it would.
Do you have any more, Mr. Baker?
No, I guess I'm done.
Ms. Philbrook.
I just want to say thank you to all the Housing Authority employees that came down to Muldrow after the storm. We had really terrible, extensive damage down there. I went down there to look around. It looked like the whole town was damaged, and the Cherokee homes, a lot of them were severely damaged, and the Housing Authority employees were out there early the next morning. They covered the roofs with visqueen. They were doing all kinds of helpful things, and it was really appreciated by all the people living in the Cherokee housing. They did a great job. I heard a lot of good things about how fast the response was, and they delivered shingles right the next day, and they just did a good job.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Councilor Cobb.
I just want to say thank you. When I have emailed you with requests from constituents, you personally or your office has responded as fast as anyone that I've contacted, so I do appreciate that.
No problem.
Yes, please. Go.
David, let me make sure I understand. Now, not everybody was offered a job because 12 left, right?
There were 12 that chose a voluntary separation.
Okay. Well, when they chose, they really didn't have much to choose from, did they?
Well, some of those chose early on. At some point, and I can't remember exact dates, but the chief said, hey, we don't need a severance package so lucrative as we first talked about. We need to just find everyone a job. And those that sincerely wanted a job were found a pretty decent offer. There were a few that, I don't know, they took pay cuts. Some of them ranging from $300. Most of them was around $1,000. There were a few that were substantially more than that. Each person had to make that decision on their own, to either accept what was offered or choose to go on down the road, and some chose to do that. Some were just happy to have that opportunity. There was one, some that were moving away, and it worked out real good for them to get 4 weeks of voluntary separation pay.
David, as required by federal law, did you all ever give a 60-day reduction in workforce notice to the employees?
That was, we had that researched. It didn't apply in this situation the way it was being done.
And why are we saying it did not apply?
It's been so long since we had that looked at, I don't remember the exact reason.
Now, was that the one that was looked at in 04?
Same type of deal.
Okay. And in 04, we gave the 60 day. No.
Well, I think the difference was we didn't actually have a layoff. That was one of the reasons. I always have to look at the research. We didn't have that looked at.
Okay. But you realize coming to Cherokee Nation from the Housing Authority is still a reduction in workforce. Even though there was a job for them to go to, it is still coming from a state agency to another entity, and it's still a reduction in workforce.
Yeah, we had it researched.
Can or could you provide us that information at what, maybe the next meeting?
Yeah.
Because I have had, I don't know if it's how many has called, but there are some people concerned about that it was handled a little bit different.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's been 2 or 3 months ago, and I dealt with 1,000 issues since then. I just can't remember.
Ms. Fishing Hawk.
How many people did you say wasn't entitled to COBRA that won't have insurance when they leave?
There'll be 12, I believe. I believe that's the number.
Dr. Thornton.
David, I heard you say that people were deducted $300 to $1,000. Is that a month?
Deducted
from what they were making?
There were 30 folks that received what we considered a non-comparable offer. I believe all of those was due to a reduction in pay. There might have been 1 or 2 that was due to location change.
Now, was that per month?
That was a year, annual.
I need to talk to you, I guess, when this is over, about a person, and I'm hearing something else.
Okay.
And won't you check on it for me?
Okay, sure can.
Thank you.
Jordan.
And David, I want you to understand my comments are not directed towards you. I know that you have a board that you have to answer to, and I think my concern is I wonder if that board understands that there are certain state and federal laws that they have to follow. And I think somewhere in the scheme of things, those laws have been totally, well, they've just not been looked at by the board, which is of great concern to me because I think it opens not the tribe, but I think it opens the housing authority to potential litigation when a slightly better severance package would have kept that from happening. Because what I'm seeing is that we have probably shorted these individuals at least 4 weeks in this severance package, and although I guess we just maybe have a difference of opinion on the COBRA, I don't think we get the option of saying we don't provide for COBRA simply because our insurance policy, we've elected to let it lapse at the end of this month. As you said at the beginning of your report, financially, the housing authority is very strong. Generally, when you would see something offered less than required by federal and state law, it's because the company has gone under. That's not the issue here. In fact, today, we're even being asked to move their discretionary funds through one of these housing plans from them to over here to make provisions in the Indian housing plan for what happens to those, what I call discretionary funds. Those are the money that is returned to the housing authority by the participants. There's an awful lot of that money over there, and it certainly could have been used by your board to sufficiently take care of those individuals that are leaving so that we don't have to look at litigation later on. I mean, there are federal and state laws that needed to be looked at, and I don't believe they were addressed by your board. And that is not a personal statement to you, Mr. Sutherland, because I know you have tried to do everything you can to be fair with the employees, the ones coming and the ones going. But I think your board needs to really take a close look at what they're required to do. They can say all day that they asked these, or that these people voluntarily left, but when you got nothing to go to, it's not much of a volunteering. And I really think we better look at this COBRA issue. If we're not going to offer them the option of taking that insurance because we're going to get rid of that plan, then we need to do something else to make sure that this doesn't come back and bite us later on. And that's my personal opinion, but I can see what's coming next. We've got some disgruntled folks, some folks that are coming over and some folks that are leaving because they were not treated to the minimum according to federal and state law.
Councilor Soap?
Yes, Mr. Sutherland, on the personnel that were offered non-comparable positions, were those primarily management salary positions or were they primarily hourly positions?
The bulk of them are management type positions. There were maybe 8 of the 30, somewhere around in there, that would be non-exempt type staff.
Councilor Baker.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you, I'm a tad frustrated, and it's no indictment on David whatsoever. But Meredith and myself and Callie and Doug and David all met and tried to work out a really good, fair package for these employees. And we spent 2 or 3 meetings sitting down trying to divide them up, saying, okay, we've got some that are, between 60 and 65 that could take early retirement, and we would like to do, this kind for them, and for the non-comparables, if they were offered where they had to drive 90 miles instead of, 3 miles, then that wouldn't be comparable, and none of that we agreed, or at least in principle agreed to, was ever presented to the board. That's not what, they didn't hear any of that.
Yeah, they were presented that.
But not in the meeting.
Yeah. They was only used it for 2 or 3 months, and they felt like it wasn't fair to all the employees. Someone there for 20 years or whatever, or, somebody even been there for 5. The difference in the package was pretty substantial. I'm just repeating what.
But if you've been there 20 years and you get a month's salary for each year you've been there, I don't see the unfairness in a 20-year somebody that has devoted their life to the organization and somebody that's only been there 5 years. And I do recall one of the board members saying that he didn't want to give the ones that were separating more than the ones that were taking lower jobs. But I didn't agree with that statement either, because at least they have a job. And then we talked about how important insurance is, because a lot of folks were only working there for the insurance.
Sure.
And to decide that, okay, everybody's going to join the Cherokee Nation. Well, let them join the Cherokee Nation, take COBRA from us.
When we talk about COBRA, just keep in mind, offering COBRA and paying for COBRA for them, two really different things.
I understand.
We almost never have anybody choose COBRA because of the cost of it. Now, if you're paying for it for someone, then I'm sure that there would be a lot of interest in it. So just make you aware of that.
Any more questions for Mr. Sutherland? Mr. Cobb?
Can you tell me of those 30 people, and you may not be able to, but roughly what was their tenure? And we were looking at...
They were substantially, probably 10 years or more.
On average?
On average.
Thank you.
I'll take one more question. Okay.
David, can you tell us about what the average is for the 12 that had to leave on tenure?
Big change there. We had some that hadn't been there very long, like 2 or 3 years, and then there were a few that had been there for 15 to 30, 15 to 25.
How many had been there for 15 to 25 that were asked to leave? Or say 10 on up. It was about 9 of them, wasn't it?
I'd guess to make that.
9 out of 12.
At least half of them. At least half of the 12.
Were long-time employees.
Yeah. Over 10.
One had 30-some, one had 20-some, and there was a bunch between 10 and 20.
I don't think we had any 30-year. There was maybe one 20-year and a couple maybe 15.
Almost 30 years up in J, I think.
You're probably right. You're probably not right.
Okay. Thank you, David. Yes, Jody?
I've got a question for you. How would we go about checking on these 12? It bothers me to leave 12 people without no insurance, I'll be honest, Charlie. How do we go about checking on, seeing if there's a way we can give these 12 some kind of, the minimum that the federal government?
Well, what I think we probably need to do is have David come back to the next meeting here, or have him to check within the next day or two to see what happened to it. I'm kind of concerned about the law on COBRA, David. If you could find some quotes or some law on the thing that Councilor Jordan has brought up, I'm concerned about that. That if you would email it to all the council members of what you find out about the COBRA insurance. Is that what you're referring to? And find the quotes in the law and email it to all the council members so they can have some peace of mind about the COBRA questions here. Thank you. Moving on to old business, I see none. So we'll go into new business. And the first is a briefing on environmental assessments. And we wanted one for the water and sanitation program, housing, and then lead-based paint. And I see Mr. Elkins moving to the microphone. And Tom, are you going to discuss for all the programs that we asked for here?
Pretty much.
And the reason that I wanted some discussion, or at least a brief overview of it, me and some of the other council members have some questions as to why it takes so long to get environmentals done, get lead-based paint done, archaeology done, and I'm familiar with some of that stuff, and I think it would be a good overview for me too, but I think the questions coming up is some of the housing participants are waiting on environmental reviews. Some of our water and sanitation people are waiting on environmentals and things like that. And if you could walk us through the processes and how long it takes to get those back and what happens, and then we'll go from there. If there's any questions, we'll take those up after your presentation.
Sir, I'm not much on brevity. In fact, Mr. Jones told me I only had 30 minutes, so I'll do my best to stay. I usually go much beyond that. But just as an overview, we do environmental reviews for Indian Health Service projects, Department of Interior, maybe BIA projects, and then we do for NAHASDA projects. We have certification ability, that authority from the federal government on the HUD projects and on Indian Health Service. For BIA things, they consider that an inherent federal function, and we put together all the information for them and it goes to them. They have to certify that. We have to do a sort of environmental review for just about any time we spend some of those federal monies. And what that means is we have to do an environmental review at the first of the year for our administrative functions. Things like buying paying our rent, our space costs, things of that nature, for buying supplies and things like that. Now that doesn't mean that we're digging a spoon or a shovel into the ground. It just shows, and we have to put a document in there. It's not very much of one, just a couple pages saying that none of those actions are going to harm the environment or impact what they call the human environment. Then we go to things like doing mortgage assistance for folks. Now that may seem like a little thing, and all we're doing is cutting folks a check to help them buy a home. But we have to do a small area of environmental review. The three things we have to check out is it in a floodplain? Is it in a coastal barrier zone, which we don't live near the coast, so that's an easy one. And then we have to make sure about airport cruising. Well, if we're not within a certain area of an airport that uses a jet at least one day, that's not an issue. So mainly all we're looking at is floodplain issues. When we construct things, we have to go into all those three things. Then we have to consult with a bunch of other agencies, usually, depending on where it's at and what's done with it. If we're constructing a home or a set of homes like that, we may have to consult with the Oklahoma Archaeological Survey, the Historical Survey, the Scenic Rivers, Fish and Wildlife. Now, we've kind of tweaked these to where if we know where they're at and how big an area of land we're actually going to disturb, we may not have to consult with them at all. On the other hand, if we exceed a certain area of ground that we're going to build on, or if we're going to be in a certain area that, I'm not going to describing all these, we have certain clearance letters that we may not have to actually physically consult with any of those. On the other hand, we may. And when we do consult with them, it usually ends up, we put the legal description on there, say what we're going to do, whether we're going to build a water line, we're going to build a set of houses, one house, something to that effect. And we ask them for the areas that they have jurisdiction over, maybe it's historical significance, things like that, how will that impact that? They have 30 days from the time they get that inquiry to send us that back. So we have to wait that long. Now, some of these agencies that we work with, like the Scenic Rivers Commission, for the most part, if it's an emergency, we drive out there, give them the letter, they look at it and say, okay, good. They stamp it, send it back, sign it, and we're good. On the other hand, the Historical Society, they take every bit of 30 days. When they do that, if they find that there's any kind of significance that they need to go further on, that's when it kicks in. They have not only those 30 days, but they may say you need an archaeological survey. Or maybe that area, that house is a certain time period of home, or it's within a certain area of historical significance. And they may say, we need a study on this. So we may, if we don't have that expertise in-house, we may have to contract with someone to do that. We contract with a lot of archaeologists because we don't have any on the side. Sometimes we do tens of those in a month. Sometimes we do one or two. If we're doing road projects, if we're doing water line projects, if we're doing home projects, we may do a dozen of those. And they can cost anywhere from $500 to many tens of thousands of dollars, just depending on what they find. And again, with that, with the archaeological survey, we may send it out to them, and they may say, no, there's no historical archaeological significance. We get a letter back and we're good to go on it. On the other hand, they may come back and say, you need an archaeological field inspection. Of the ones we've done to date, I think Mahanza, we started getting money in 98, and I wasn't affiliated with it until about 2000. We've had about a handful, 5 or 6 that went, maybe 10, that went farther than that initial field inspection. Like I say, those can cost from those initial ones can cost $5,000 to $1,000 to $1,500, depending on where they're at and the extent of what you've done. On the other hand, there's been a few at some of our community buildings that went into the next stage and cost $15,000 to $20,000. That may be cost prohibitive to do that project. On the other hand, if it's I don't know how many millions of dollars some of these bigger projects would cost, that may not be cost prohibitive for that. But these are all decision-making factors that we look at to see, can those projects be done? Are they worth being done? Are they worth the time, the money, and all the things that we look at? That's why we really try to work with the programs at the very first of these programs to see, where are you locating these? Are they in a floodplain? Are they close to a floodplain? Does it look like they're near an airport? Do we need to really build there? Is that land that we really need to buy? So we need to use that, we try to use that as decision-making factors and to even look at where we're going to be doing some of these projects.
Okay. I think you gave us a pretty good overview. What I'd like to do now is leave it open to questions from the committee members. I think some of the frustrations that have come from Tom is we send somebody in on an emergency and we're waiting and waiting and waiting. Is there anything that we can do if it's an emergency situation? Sure. And then I'm going to leave it open for the questions here.
On emergencies, you use federal money. Tribal money. If we have, as the Housing Authority and now housing programs have non-federal money, they can use it anytime for any of that. And they budget it for like that for emergencies. Now for HUD, if we're talking about housing projects, most things aren't considered emergencies. You have a house that needed repair for 5 years, and now the roof's falling in, it's not really an emergency. On the other, because it really ideally should have been maintained and it should have been looked at before that. On the other hand, if there's an act of God, you might call it, and something falls through there, yeah, that's an emergency to life and property, certainly. And those can be looked at easily. Now, we do have, even let's say rehabilitation on a house. If the house is not over a certain period of time, age, we can go do that and almost have, even if it's far away, we can probably have that environmental review done the same day. Especially if we get a priority from one of our program people and say, this is an emergency. We have an elder here that lives here and we need this done right now. Unless there's something they have to do in the ground that we have to consult with the archaeological survey, we could probably have it done overnight or the next day.
So what we've heard then, if you deal with any federal funds, any HUD funds, you're looking at a 30-day turnaround by the time you turn the environmental in.
It depends. If it's something that is rehab of some sort, and if the home is older, it's definitely going to have to go. They're going to have to install it. On the other hand, if it was constructed after 1965, I think there's not much of an issue on that, especially if we're not going to dig in the ground. Now, what we finally talked with at one time, the archaeological survey position was, if you put a spoonful of dirt in the ground, a spoon in the ground, you have to consult with us. Well, now we finally said, look, we've got a house here that's 10 years old. That all of that ground around that house was disturbed. There's nothing there significant. If it was there, it's not now. When they build a house, they pretty much disturb that whole pad, that whole area. And we've finally gotten into it and seen to that.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Elkin? Ms. Rankin?
Yes. If we have our own tribal historic preservation officer and did not have to go to the state preservation officer, would this facilitate these projects or cut down the time?
In a sense, it would. For the most part, we kind of researched some of our historical regulations, and we had a team of people. We went through those. We kind of thought about that for a little while because we were consulting with the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, on every time we did anything of any kind of age. And we finally got to the point, we reread those and discussed it within the programs, the environmental programs, and the folks that do the work. And the tribe can actually make the initial determination on those without a FIFO or a tribal historic preservation. So on that first level of determination, we make it. If it looks like if there's a question, we can solve. If we think that there's no way there could be any kind of determination, if there's any kind of significance, we don't consult, and we write a memo to that effect and put it in the file. And we come out with that, and we just assumed we could do it because it's in the regulation. And we did it. Now, would it be on bigger projects if we had a FIFO? Certainly. Because we wouldn't have to consult the city.
Any more questions? Yeah, Ms. Fishing.
Can you tell me how long it takes to do your lead-based paint?
Certainly. I think there's some misunderstanding that any time we touch lead-based paint, that it has to be in a abatement. All the lead-based paint work we've done since that requirement came out in 2000, 2002, something like that, we probably have done just a handful of abatements. And I've been around most of them. I think there's been 4 or 3, something like that. There's hardly any. We can do the program can do most of the work through what's called interim controls, where they just use lead-safe work practices. They don't get that dust stirred up. They just go in and they use these type of methods, and it's not a full abatement. They don't have to get in the suits. They don't have to use the respirators. They don't have to move the families out of the house. Another thing I think people don't understand is that just because you have lead-based paint in the home doesn't mean it's a hazard. You can have lead-based paint and it be intact, and that's not a hazard for children. On the other hand, if it is peeling or dusting or something like that, but that can then that becomes a hazard, and we make that determination. I think one of the other issues that folks don't understand is that every time we look at a house, we have to do a full-blown lead-based paint inspection. Now, if we have to power those out, they can be $300, $400, $500, $600, depending on where you're located in the state. We have at least 6 people in our shop that can do those, and we have 3 of the instruments that can do those. One of them getting kind of old, and I should probably get rid of that before long. But we do that in-house. But just because we buy the house doesn't mean we have to look at lead-based paint. If the house was constructed before 1978, we have to do a visual inspection of it if it's being purchased. But we don't have to actually physically go out and check it for lead-based paint. We have to go out, somebody has to go out. It could be the housing people, it could be us, and we do that for them if they don't have the folks to do it. To do a visual inspection just to make sure that paint's intact. And so it's much less of an intrusive than cost.
Okay, how much is the cost to do an environmental review and then to do a lead-based paint?
Oh man, that is such a wide area because, and let me explain this to you.
I'll rehash. I'm not talking about one of our big projects.
Okay. If there's absolutely if it's just minor consultation, 30-day turnaround, it might be $1,500, something to that effect.
On lead-based paint or environmental?
Environmental. The lead-based paint, it just costs us our time. And, we have upkeep on our machines, and that's quite a bit because they have radioactive sources in them and they have to be resourced every so often and have to be certified that they're working and not leaking and things like that. So if that cost is all built into them, it could be a couple $1,000 if they did lead-based paint and environmental.
And how much did you say the environmental reviews were running?
That could be $1,500 or so to that effect. Now, if we come into this one and they say, okay, well, we need an archaeological field inspection. You can add another $500, usually $1,000 on that. Then they come back and they say, okay, well, we need this. Or we need you to look at this. So we can do it for $1,500, something like that. And then on the other hand, we've had many thousands of dollars in for sure. If we do mortgage assistance, it might be a few $100s. And to get something that's of real significance, it might be a couple $1,000s.
Tom, thank you for your overview, and if we have any more questions, I'll have the council members to call you directly to get clarification. But thank you for the overview. I think that cleared up some questions for us. Moving on to new business. First item of new business, the second item of new business, a resolution authorizing the submission of a special grant application to the U.S. Department of Agriculture for the Housing Preservation Grant. And who's here to talk about that or to present that? David?
This is a $38,000 grant from through the USDA, the Housing Preservation Grant. We use that to supplement the Housing Improvement Program grants, and that's where the cash match comes for, is the HIP grant. That's kind of the way it's been done the last several years to use those conjunction.
Any questions on the resolution? I hear a motion to approve this resolution.
I make a motion to be approved.
I hear a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you, David. Third, a resolution approving and authorizing the submission of the amended fiscal year 2007 Indian Housing Plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Who's here to present that? Marvin, is that you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't have much to present here. I told Tom 3 minutes. He interpreted it to be 30 minutes a while ago. Just a real quick overview. I wanted to mention about the Indian Housing Plan process itself real quickly, because there was some discussion a couple of committee meetings ago about when the next Indian Housing Plan for 09 would be due and could we get it earlier. That whole process appears to be changing, and I've sent some information over to the council house so that any of y'all that are interested in that particular issue, it's there, and it's probably worth its own discussion at some point. And I won't try to go into it right now, but I wanted to advise you of that. The other thing, at our last committee meeting and discussion of Indian housing plans, there was a lot of discussion about the wording of the resolutions. We changed the wording of the resolutions from these two proposals before you today to what we agreed to that the last time we had an Indian housing plan. That's the wording that Mr. Henry worked on, so we changed that for you. Now specifically in regard to the 2007 Indian Housing Plan before you, I want to say that it's connected to the 2008 Indian Housing Plan, which we'll discuss a little bit pretty soon. And I'll discuss that real briefly here. The main reason that we're revising this plan is because of the Housing Authority of the Delaware Tribe reduced the amount to the Delawares, which means that we have to change our Indian housing plan. They reduced the amount to the Delawares because the Delawares hadn't been reporting information in order for HUD to determine how many 1937 Act units, for example, as mutual health was paid off. Delawares weren't reporting it to HUD, so they're recapturing money, and since that money is in our Indian housing plan, HUD is requiring us to reduce our Indian housing plan to take that into account. But that's not the only change. That's why we're changing it, but it comes at a good time because, like I mentioned, the changes that we're proposing in this plan as it relates to the Cherokee amounts will take into account the large reduction from our 2008 money. So I'll talk about that here real briefly. The other thing that we're doing right now is that we're recognizing additional income that's being earned by the money invested. We're recognizing that in this particular plan. So therefore we have additional money And because of the coincidence of the Delaware issue, we're going to go ahead and recognize that right now. So real briefly, I don't know if you have this particular document in front of you. Let me go ahead and pass it out again. It gives you a summary comparison to the plan that was passed a couple of months ago. And I'll just go through it real quick. It increases the amount for a couple of resident services for human services, and it increases the amount for housing management. Recognizes the income, also made a correction of the number of mortgage assistance units. I had simply made a mistake in the original, or the last submittal by including those environmental as though that's going to be mortgage assistance to the family and miscalculate the number of mortgage assistance recipients there actually would be. If I could briefly talk about why the resident services and why the housing management is being increased. It is in order to have the 2000 money cover a couple of human service activities so that they can extend over to the end of the fiscal year. And then there's a couple of housing management, the people coming over from the housing authority to the drive that'll extend them through the end of the fiscal year. What that will allow us to do is then reduce the amount in the 2008 plan for those very same activities. So we're increasing it in the 07 plan because we got this additional money that we're recognizing from our investment. And then we're going to reduce the 2008 money for the very same activities, and that will allow us to, as you all probably know, the 2008 plan includes a $2 million reduction, and part of that reduction is because of this, I'll call it manipulation, that we're going to use this particular money to pay for costs that would normally have been paid out of the 2008 Indian Housing Plan. So.
Any questions? Everybody clear on what Marvin's got presented to us now? Yes, Mrs.
It's just about as clear as mud.
Okay.
What exactly, Marvin, are you trying to do in changing the 2007 plan? Very plainly. I mean, just cut to the chase.
Reducing the Delaware amount like we're required to do. Recognizing additional income that is not in the...
Is that proceeds of sale?
No. It's the income when Cherokee Nation draws down the money and earns interest off of it.
Okay. So this 207 modification of the housing plan does not in any way reflect any proceeds of sale that the housing authority might be holding?
That's correct.
Okay.
No. The third thing it does is it expends that additional program income or investment income, and it's connected to the 2008 Indian Housing Plan. Hopefully that's clear enough. I can...
Any more questions? Okay, thank you. Do I hear... Okay, hang on just a minute. Mr. Tornin.
Marvin, on the housing management, is the increase for salary increases?
The increase is primarily, normally the 2007 Indian Housing Plan for housing management would be expended by the end of May, and then the 2008 Indian Housing Plan would pay for the cost for June, July, August, and September. In this particular case, we're just going to pay for those same costs out of the 07 Indian Housing Plan instead of the '08 Indian Housing Plan. So the answer is I don't believe so, although it does include some cost for what we've been calling one-time project costs, meaning in the course of the transition of Housing Authority employees over to Cherokee Nation, there are some one-time costs for vehicles and computers and such things like that, which are outdated or really not usable. And part of that money, for example, David's group will be getting some, I believe it's some new vehicles, David, wasn't it? Yeah, some new vehicles from that.
And that's coming out of housing management?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marvin, do I hear a motion to approve this resolution?
I make a motion that we approve it.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Moving on to number 4. Marvin, you want to get into that? The resolution approving and authorizing the submission of the amended fiscal year 2008 Indian Housing Plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Mr. Young.
Thank you. The first thing I need to say is the obvious that we have a large reduction in money from a couple of months ago when the original plan, the 08 plan, was approved, based on the estimated amount from HUD. We have a large decrease in it. I've been asked if I might talk about that just real briefly. The largest portion of that reduction is due to a lawsuit several tribes have against HUD, and HUD's reduced the amount of money, or it's withheld the amount of money to be allocated pending the completion of that lawsuit. I believe that they're retaining about $18 million. I have a copy, if anybody wants it, or we can get it to you, of the actual award letter from HUD where it goes into a little bit of detail describing that. There are some other things that is a source of the reduction. Again, the Delaware amount is reduced because they didn't properly submit information to HUD, so that amount's being reduced. Another reason is because the regulations have changed, and now there is a new minimum amount for Indian tribes. No matter how small or no matter what the data shows, they've basically been allowed to get double the amount than they had previously. And that means that the pool for the rest of the tribes is reduced because some of the minimum funding tribes are getting essentially twice as much as they had previously, which in numbers that they're getting about 45,000 per tribe as a minimum now, where previously it was about 25,000. The other reason is because our controller wanted us to reduce our estimate on the amount of interest we're going to earn because of the reduction in interest rates. So we're being conservative, frugal, or we would say stingy. But that's based on Callie's instruction that we had included an estimate in the previous plan based on, older interest rates, and that we're just simply not going to earn as much money under the current interest rates available. So we've reduced that estimate considerably.
Okay, Marvin, I have a question for Mr. Baker here.
Okay.
Yeah, Marvin, are they withholding $18 million from us or across the nation?
Across the nation.
So what does it really mean to us?
Really means to us, if you took that, probably we normally get about 4.5% of that. So if you roughly calculate that, whatever that comes to be, probably 1,200,000 or 3, something like that, I would guess. It's from the lawsuit.
Councilor Cobb and then Councilor Fishing Hawk.
Can you expand a little bit on the Delaware not submitting properly? Can you show, is there somewhere in here a page you can kind of point me to?
Yes, let me see if I can get it to you. Their amount reduced approximately, let's see, on page 15 of the 2008 Indian Housing Plan. Where it has the use of resources page.
I may be on the
wrong plan. I see. Right page. Is that page 15?
See 15?
Yeah, page 15 of the 2008 Indian Housing Plan. And it'll list some dollar amounts along there. This side of the room has it. I don't know.
Do you need new glasses?
Yeah, you need a doctor.
Disgusting, eh? That's all right, I'll find it, but I'll talk to you after. I was just curious because I'm going to get asked that question. So.
Yeah, we've been corresponding with them, and we let them know, or at least the housing authority know, whether they're in turn letting tribal people know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Fishing Hawk.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. Marvin, on the housing management, the original housing management service amount, that's at 12%, so the program income is added into that, so actually it's higher than the 12%. Is that what we do every year with it? I'm curious. Does the program income go into housing management service?
Not necessarily. We don't distinguish from the grant amount and the program income amount when we do the total. So we really don't know, what is paid out of the grant amount and what is paid out of the interest amount.
But is that how you got the 39,558,419 that you told us earlier? I'm just trying to figure this out.
Okay. The amount, which amount are you referring to now again?
We was discussing program income just a minute ago. I kind of asked about it, and you, I thought, said it was going to be added into the housing management amount. Maybe I misunderstood you.
I think she was asking questions in regard to the 2007 Indian Housing Plan and our, okay.
That's why I'm asking, do you do it for this year too that way?
But actually in the 08 Indian Housing Plan, what I was referring to as what the controller said, we actually reduced the program income estimated amount that we will receive for the 08 Indian Housing Plan because of the interest rates. So again, we don't go and match up either a reduction or increase in program income or interest with a specific activity. It's all just income, as whether it's grant income or it's earned from interest. We don't try to match it up one for one.
Okay. Well, after our conversation the other day, I am going to request something so I can start understanding this better. And I'm also going to request our half day with you to sit down and have just a work setting where you can go over this with me.
Sure.
I would like a copy of the original 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, the original IHPs, and I want to compare them to the APRs for, I guess, just for 4, 5, and 6. So I can kind of get some of this straight in my head that I was asking questions on the other day.
Okay. We can probably...
can you send them electronically?
Yeah, sure. We can probably get them easier. They're all at the council house, but they'd have to go through, and so it may be easier for us to go ahead and send them directly to you if you want.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Soap.
Yes, Marvin, on the issue with the various tribes, I guess, suing or whatever HUD. Is that pretty common? And if so, how long does it take to get a ruling on that issue?
It hasn't been common, but it's getting more common since one of them won. This particular Fort Peck tribe won at the initial federal court level. Now it's on appeal to Denver, I believe. Whatever court that is, the appeal court there. This issue, actually, we have been corresponding with HUD to actually be on HUD's side in this particular court case. Essentially, what the case is that the judge ruled that as the implementation of NAHASDA or the enactment of NAHASDA, that every low rent and every mutual help house that you had at that particular time will forever receive money to maintain and operate those units as long as NAHASDA is in existence. That means that if you have mutual help houses, they've paid off, they're destroyed, they're no longer in existence, you still get money to maintain and operate nothing, but you still get money for it, and that's basically what the judge ruled.
So what's the time frame on this, Marvin? I mean,
the time frame
tribes could just keep year after year raising these issues, and then 10 years down the road all our housing plans are tied up, and assumably $20 million is staying in the United States Treasury and earning interest for them, I assume.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of complicating issues in it that I won't go into right now, but one of the problems is HUD stipulated to these particular tribes that if they won, they would be paid this money out of the NAHASDA funds, which pretty much, I believe, ties HUD down to withholding that particular piece of money. Since then, they're not stipulating. They're saying, we don't, we're going to go all the way through the court process, which will take years probably. Depends on how long. Now the Congress is saying, we don't want it to go that long, and are going to try to perhaps pass a law to limit the whole situation. But we are talking about probably years in that regard.
So when you say we're on HUD's side, are we supporting that initiative to try to push something through Congress or are you aware of any initiative to do that?
Yes, and we are supportive of what is termed the Fort Peck Fix.
Okay,
yeah.
That's a good. I'll write that down. Thank you.
Yeah. Jordan.
Marvin, for next month's meeting, will you I'm asking you to bring this.
Okay.
I'd like for you to reconcile each Indian housing plan to its individual budget in the comprehensive budget, and each time from this point forward, after you do this, when you submit a batch of the NAHASDA budgets, provide that reconciling so that we know which housing plan each one of those go with. And if you need more information about how to do it, I'd like to talk to you afterwards.
Okay.
But I think if you would put the Indian housing plan with its actual budget so we can see how both of the things are working out, it might be a little bit easier for us to understand where the money's going.
Sure. We do that anyway, but we just haven't transferred that information when the budgets are submitted, but be happy to do that.
And the other thing I would ask the chairperson to consider is that since we're going to start the process of taking up the 2009 housing plan, that we form a subcommittee on just housing, so that now that we're going to be totally responsible for housing, since it has moved to the tribe, as of May 1st, it will be totally here at the tribe. I think that we all need to gain a much better understanding of where our housing dollars are going and what they're being used for. And I think that could be accomplished better by forming a subcommittee, much like what we've done on Taro and some other things, to make sure that everyone that's interested in housing on this body has a complete understanding of how our housing dollars are being used, how much of it's being used for employees, how much of it's being used for mortgage assistance, how much of it's actually being used to provide the building packages. We really need to start taking a closer look, because now this is all going to be falling in to our lap, and we're not going to be able to say, hey folks, that's not our fault, that's the housing authority's fault. This is now going to be our problem. And I would ask the chairperson to consider at this time the formation of that subcommittee on just housing.
Okay. We'll take that up right after this.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution that Marvin had just presented?
So moved.
Second. Second. Moved and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Aye. I think we had one aye.
I think he didn't hear you when you asked for it. He meant yay or nay.
Okay, let the record show.
Did you mean yay or nay, to approve or not to approve?
To approve.
He was delayed.
Okay, we're all in agreement. Okay, thank you, Marvin. We just had for the committee to come up to talk about forming a subgroup for our ending housing plan. At this time, I'd like to ask the members to hold their hand up if you'd like to serve on this subcommittee group. I would be one. David, where do you want to get on?
Did you want to be on?
Janelle.
Can't take her support.
How many of us was it?
If I had everybody at 7.
7. That's good. That's good work. Yeah, come on. Okay, we have 7 on that. And the ones I have is Harley Buzzard, Bill John Baker, Chris Soap, Donna Glory Jordan, Joe Crittenden, Jody Fishenhawk, and Janelle Fulbright. Okay, thank you. Marvin, you had another comment?
Yeah, in regard to that, if I could make a suggestion or two. One thing is what I'd mentioned right in the beginning about this probably radical change in regard to the Indian Housing Plan process, which HUD is going through a consultation process right now. And it may very well be implemented in the next few months, so make sure that we're not operating off the old rules if there's some new rules coming up. And I'll keep you advised of that. And like I said, I did send the consultation document to the council house. So you already have that if you want to take a look at the new form and the new requirements if it comes into effect. And the second thing I would mention is you might want to consider, and we'll send you information, as they develop new training for how to do the new Indian Housing Plan. If it comes into effect, you may want to send some people to that training as it comes up. And I'll make sure I let you know as that comes up.
I think what Marvin was talking about, you have this consultation plan in front of you here, so take a look at it and if you have any questions. Okay, thank you, Marvin.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a time, Tana? Does anybody have a time when we may work this subcommittee group in? Do you have any suggestions for our housing subgroup?
If we have some of that available time,
11 to 12?
11 to 12 between the meetings, that might be a good start.
Are you talking about 11 to 12 like today?
Like to, next month, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, that way if health runs to 11:30, then, we could have 30 minutes or work into our lunch.
Let's go ahead and put it in.
We'll
See how it goes, and then we may want to change that, if it doesn't work out.
We
So
might want to even do it as like a working lunch. We just go
we can do that. Yeah.
at 11,
So,
and then
so
we
we'll
have
schedule
2
it
hours
for
there.
between 11 o'clock,
Sandwiches.
11 to 12 on our next month. That'd have to help me. Okay, is there any announcements that the committee would like to present? Anybody from the audience have any announcements? Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you for coming.